Alrighty, little mathematicians, how are we doing today? We are gonna start with some place value understanding and building our understanding there. But in order to begin this video and to begin our learning, the first thing you need to do is get a notebook and a pencil. And while we are doing this video, I suggest that you take notes and follow along with me to be ensure that you are learning. Since we are not face to face, you might have more questions or you might get confused. So you can pause the video and go back if you need to, or write your questions down and I can answer them later. So for our target for today is I can reason concretely and pictorially using place value understanding to relate adjacent base 10 units from millions to thousands. Remember, a unit is a number. So we have base 10 units, which is tens, hundreds, thousands. And so essentially what our goal is to be able to explain this relationship between base 10 units and numbers that range from the millions to the thousandths place. So we are going to go into decimal place value today. And we are going to use a place value chart. Concrete means it's clear using a place value chart. So what we're essentially going to be doing is looking at numbers and values of what happens to a number when you multiply it by 10, you multiply it by 100, you multiply it by 1,000. Or when you divide that same number by 10, by 100, or by 1,000. Alrighty, so let's take a look at our place value chart real quick. This is a really essential skill, especially in 5th grade. We're going to need to use this. We will refer to this quite often. So one thing I challenge students to do is to practice reciting the place value chart and practice identifying the different units in a number without even using this. So let's do it. Let's practice real quick. And you can practice with me at home. Thousandths, hundredths, tenths, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. So you might notice there is a pattern. So when you go from ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, on the other side of the ones you have tenths, then it's hundredths, and then it's thousands. So you might know that there is a similarity in the names of these guys and these guys on the other side. So the biggest difference is these are part of a whole. And we'll go into more understanding and later. And those are fractions. So these are fraction numbers. And these are all wholes, right? So let's just go to the basic of place value understanding. Let's say I have 1, 1, right? So with my 1, what happens when I multiply that 1? How do I 1 by 10? So if I use the place value chart, I can show that understanding. Multiply 1 by 10, essentially what I'm doing is I'm creating 10 copies of 1, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I have 10 ones, right? And you know how we can't have 10 ones, so we are going to bundle this little friend here and we're going to take it to our 10. So let's do that. Let's do that same thing. Okay. What happens when I multiply 10 or 10 ones, 10 by 10? So what happens when I multiply a 10 by 10? So now we're going to show 10 times 10. So we can draw 10 10. So we're going to make 10 copies of a 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My dots are a little small here, but that's okay. So now we have 10 tens. And boys and girls, remember you can't have 10 two digits in a place value. So 10 tens essentially becomes 100, right? So there's our 1, 0, 0. So we have 100. And let's go ahead and go through our place value chart. So what happens when we have 10 hundreds, or 100 times 10? That's 10 copies of 100. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the same process, we are going to circle it. We're going to bundle this group, guys. So let's bundle. I'm going to say that word with me together. And we're going to send that 10 hundreds to the next row. And that becomes thousands, right? So essentially what happened is we started with 110, and then we multiplied that 110 times 10, and we got 10. And then we took that 10 and we multiplied it by 10 again, and we got 100. Then we multiplied that 100 by 10, so 100 times 10, and we got 1,000. So we can continue if we wanted to. We could do 1,000 by 10, and hopefully, or we will, once we get 10 copies, we'll end up bundling this again, and we'll move into our 10,000s place. Okay. And so the same rule applies when you do it with your decimals. So let's say you have 10 tens. Take a deep breath, boys and girls. We can do this together. So we have 10. We have 10 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we are going to rebundle this. You know you have to take it. And you're going to move it to the next place value, right? So here's your 1. We have nothing left here, so this becomes a 1.0, okay? A 1 decimal 0, which this is also equal to 1 whole. So this equals 1 whole. Just to kind of build on that, let's take a look at thousands place. So we're going to do the same thing with the thousands. We have 1,000th, and we're going to make 10 copies of it. So 1,000, 10 copies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going to bundle that little guy here, and we're going to send it to our hundreds place. Okay, so now we have 100th. Now it's important to note, though, it's a little different from working with wholes because we have a decimal here. We always have to have the decimal. So it becomes 0.01. That is 100th. So 0.01 is equal to 100th. And that's really one of the things we're going to keep practicing, and it's another assignment that you're going to work on, is just understanding place value, understanding what 0.1 is versus 0.01 versus 0.001. Okay, all of them have a digit of 1, but they're all in different places. So the actual value of those numbers is different. Alrighty, so we are gonna look at how the value of a number changes when we multiply or divide by a power of 10. So that's essentially what our goal is today. So let's take a look at these 3 equations. So let's say we have 274 ones divided by 10, 274 divided by 100, and 274 divided by 1,000. Okay. So remember, when we divide, our numbers get smaller, right? We're breaking our groups down and we're making them smaller. So that's really one of the biggest things to keep in mind when we divide. We're changing it, but we're also making the groups smaller. We're chunking it out, right? So we have here 4 ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 tens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 2 hundreds, right? So we have 274. And when we divide by 10, boys and girls, remember when we are dividing by 10, what you're doing is you're taking each and you're chunking it out into 10, okay? So what we're basically doing is we're gonna take each of these, remember what we did with our place value, and we're gonna shift it. So now that 4 becomes here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Our 7 is gonna shift to our ones place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then our 200s is going to shift to our 10s. 1, 2. So now we have 2 10s, which is also 20, 7 1s, and here's our decimals, and 4 tenths, okay, or 0.4, okay. So it's 27 and 4 tenths. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at patterns that we notice. So this first one was 27 and 4 tenths, right? Let's take a look at this next one. What happens when we divide by 100? So this time we're going to divide it by 100. Oh, so we had 27.4. I didn't mean to delete that whole thing. So 274 divided by 100. And remember, 100 is 10 times 10. So it's 2 groups of 10. So 1, 2, right? So that 2 comes here. Same thing is going to work with this guy. 1, 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And same thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have 2 and 74 hundredths. 2 and 74 hundredths. So when we divided by 100, we had 27 and 4 tenths. Now we have 2 and 74 hundredths, right? So just by looking at this, we can predict that when we divide by 1,000, our number is going to shift even more, and it's going to become 0.274, okay? So your job now is to think about those patterns that that you may or may not have noticed when we divided by tens, right? And when how did the value of each number change? So here, this is a value of 7 tens and 7 ones and 2 tens. And then it becomes 7 tenths and 2 ones. And then here it becomes 2 tenths. So you might notice that the value of each number changes. Pretty good, right? Good job. Okay, last one we're going to do together. So we're going to have 4 tenths. Okay, so here's our decimal and here's our 4. Okay, we're going to have 4 tenths and we're going to multiply that by 10. So this time we're going to make 4 copies and we're going to multiply. So remember, when we divide, the number gets smaller. We're chunking it out, we're bringing it down. When we multiply, it goes the opposite direction. So we end up with 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to have 4 wholes, right? And what if we did the same thing, but multiplied it by 100, right? So 4 times 100, you go over twice. 1, 2, so you have 4 and a 0, right? So I think the biggest thing here is just to know that when you work with base 10, like say you have a 10, this is a power of 1, okay? And because there's only 1 10. When you have 100, this is a power of, this is a power of 2 because it's 2 tens. When you have 1,000, it's the power of 3. So you have 3 tens. And by looking at those, you know you're shifting your place value to that many times.